Hello and welcome to the School Choice Report. My name is David Hardy. Today our guest is Rachel Langan, Senior Education Policy Analyst for the Commonwealth Foundation. When she graduated from Westchester University with a degree in elementary education, she then obtained a master's degree in library and information science from the University of Pittsburgh. And after more than a decade as a school librarian at two of the top-rated school districts in Chester County, Langdon now dedicates her efforts to grassroots public school policy reforms, both at the state and the local levels. With published articles in Real Clear Pennsylvania, The Mercury, and Broad and Liberty. Our guest, Rachel Langan. How you doing, Rachel?
Hi. It's nice to be here, Dave. Thank you.
Wow. So you were a librarian.
Yes, I was.
Okay. And then you jumped out of the frying pan into the fire.
Yes. COVID sort of forced me to do that.
Oh, is that right?
Yes,
That's what it was?
I already left public education prior to COVID, which is good because I don't think I would have been able to continue working in public schools when they were closed. That whole scenario just did not work for me. And I couldn't believe that my kids' schools were closed. And so I was emailing the school board and the superintendent thinking, if they just understand how detrimental this is going to be to kids, they'll reopen. No, they didn't care. And that just put me on a path to be, I guess what I call like an accidental advocate or an accidental activist. Like when schools did not reopen in fall of 2020, I was like, all bets are off. Like Catholic schools down the street are open. Like, why aren't public schools open? And I couldn't get any answers. And I have a new career as a result. So,
well, I mean, look, you're like a lot of us. You've been radicalized by the circumstances. I mean, they are unfair circumstances, and you just don't want to see it. I get it.
Right.
Welcome to the fight.
Yeah. Thanks.
So we're here to talk. They talk about EITC scholarships and state-sponsored scholarships. What is an EITC scholarship, and how do they work?
So we just published a report looking at EITC scholarship recipients across the state. So EITC stands for Educational Improvement Tax Credit. It is a scholarship program in Pennsylvania that gives tens of thousands of low-income kids access to high-quality private schools of their choice. These are donor-funded. And the way that works is the donation amount that somebody donates to an EITC scholarship is based on their Pennsylvania tax bill. So instead of writing a check to the state for your taxes, you write a check to a scholarship organization who then puts that money into an EITC scholarship for a student. Student gets the scholarship, and then the donor gets either a tax credit or a tax refund. So if the donor commits to the program for 1 year, they get a 75% tax credit or tax refund. And if they commit for 2 years, they get a 90% credit or refund for both years.
But wait a minute. They don't get 100% tax credit? I thought this was something for rich guys don't have to pay their taxes. Isn't that what you hear?
That's what I hear, yes. I mean, you're still writing the check either way. So, yes, you might as well write it to a scholarship organization that's going to give it to a kid.
Well, here's what it does. It allows people to participate, to truly participate in the democratic process in their city or locality, because what happens is it lets them say, I like these guys. I like what they're doing, and I want my tax money to go here.
Yes.
So why do people always say it's one other thing you have to help me out with? Don't the people who use this wind up paying more?
The students? The families, you mean?
The person who makes the contribution.
The donors.
The donor.
Well, so you write your donation. Let's say you owe $10,000 in Pennsylvania tax. And you would write your check instead of to Harrisburg, you would write it to ABC Scholarship Organization for $10,000. Then Harrisburg would give you a credit or a refund of $9,000. So that extra $1,000 is kind of hanging out there. You would need to write to Harrisburg as your taxes. But essentially, you're paying very little in tax, and all that money is being then offset.
But the money part doesn't, the part I don't want people to miss out on is that the person who does that winds up writing a $10,000 check and then a $1,000 check.
Right.
Okay?
Yes. Correct.
So
yes. That's what you're saying.
They
Yes.
all pay more.
Correct.
Everybody who uses this pays more.
Yes.
Okay. You're paying for the opportunity to guide your taxes, and maybe
Correct.
that's a good thing. Okay. But I don't want people to think that you're getting some kind of big tax break.
Right.
There's no
correct.
financial incentive to do this.
Correct. It's more for the greater good.
Yes.
That you're choosing to do this.
Yes. Now, there's also something called OSTC scholarships. What's the difference between those and EITC scholarships?
The programs are very similar. So OSTC stands for Opportunity Scholarship Tax Credit. And the biggest difference is that for a student to receive an OSTC scholarship, they have to be residing in a low achieving public school zone. And that low achieving status is actually determined by the Pennsylvania Department of Education based on standardized test scores. So in Pennsylvania, public school students are tested annually. 3rd through 8th graders take the PSSAs. High schoolers take the Keystone exams. The PDE, Pennsylvania Department of Ed, looks at all the scores, and the ones that are in the bottom 15%, those schools are considered to be low achieving. And when you have a low achieving status, students who are living in that school district catchment area are eligible for OSTC scholarships, which would allow them to attend a private school of their choice. Those scholarships are around $3,000 a year per student, but that truly is just an average because each school, depending on their mission or their student population, would choose to use that money differently. For example, some schools might say, okay, we're going to give a modest scholarship of $500 to 25 kids. And other schools might say, we're going to give a full tuition or almost full tuition scholarship to a handful of kids so that we're meeting the needs of the very neediest children. So 3,000 is truly an average. Each school will have a different dollar amount that they are giving for OSTC scholarships. But of those low achieving schools in Pennsylvania, right now, there are 381 schools in the state that are low achieving. And in the Philadelphia School District alone, there are 136 schools, which is 41% of Philly schools. 41% are low achieving. And I think most parents don't even know that their kids could qualify for an OSTC scholarship. And by law, once the the Pennsylvania Department of Ed alerts the district that they have low achieving schools, the district is then supposed to alert parents that your child is eligible. I don't know that that's happening. I've started putting in right to know requests to districts to say, please provide the information you're sharing with parents.
Wait a minute. They're supposed to write the parents a letter saying, Dear Madam X, your child goes to one of the bottom 15% of the schools in the state.
It's supposed to be on the website.
Okay. Did you see it on any websites?
No, I did not. So they're not complying with the law. So that's sort of my first step, is to figure out, are they complying? And then to kind of figure out how do we move forward and force compliance. Because that would help a lot of kids. If parents knew that they could have, $3,000 to get their kid out of those schools, a lot of them would choose to do that. So that's my next focus, is to try that.
Okay. So what do we know about the kids who get these scholarships?
So when we did the research for this report, we actually found out a lot of information about the families.
Hold the report up so everybody can see.
Yes. There will be a link to this report in the summary of the podcast. So
okay, but it says there how EITC serves children and families in the Commonwealth.
Yes.
It talks about the educational tax credit scholarships and written by you.
Yes. Yeah. So we did a lot of research about who's receiving these scholarships, because up until now, that has not been looked at. So we found out that most families receiving these tax credit scholarships actually earn below the median income for their respective counties where they reside. And we also found out that the scholarship recipients are outperforming their public school peers, and they graduate from high school and matriculate to college at higher rates than their public school peers. And that they are present in school even when chronic absenteeism is off the charts in public schools. So it wasn't just us who discovered this. Children's Scholarship Fund of Philadelphia.
I was going to say, it sounded kind of familiar.
Yes, yes. So we were doing research, they were doing research at the same time. So also in the summary of this podcast, there will be a link to the Children's Scholarship of Philadelphia data. But they looked at students who are receiving EITC scholarships in Philly, and they looked at them compared to public school kids, charter school kids, and kids who are right there in their own private school to see how they're doing. And it turns out that scholarship students are outperforming all of their peers.
Yeah.
So it's really, really interesting data. And I encourage every listener to go to that website and check out the data for yourself.
I mean, but why is that? Should anybody be surprised at that? I mean, if you're going to a school that is in the bottom 15%, and by the way, you don't need the school to tell you that. You know that already. That's no secret, right? And the other thing is that maybe you went there, not just your child, maybe even your parents. Okay, is that a school where you're going to get up every day and go over there, junior, and go make a way for yourself? You're not going to do it. And in most of these schools, in neighborhoods like this, you see a lot of people have already escaped those schools. And you look at the percentage of people from those neighborhoods who actually go to those schools, they're lower. So yeah, this is good stuff. So what's the most surprising thing you discovered when researching the tax credit scholarships?
So there are two data points that really surprised me. The first one is that students who are receiving these scholarships come from families that earn far below the requirements for the program. So to participate in EITC or OSTC, they are means tested. So the government requires that a family earns for a family of four, about $150,000 a year. And if you earn more than that, you can't participate. So I expected to see most students coming from families that earn in that range. No. The income levels for kids receiving EITC scholarships and OSTC, but our focus was more on EITC, between $41,000 and $73,000 a year, which is far below the program requirements of $150,000 and is far below the mean for Pennsylvania in general. It's about $93,000. Most families in Pennsylvania, if you average it together, that's what they're earning. So these scholarship recipients come from families that are low income, and that shows that this program is meeting the needs of the population it was intended to serve. So that was really exciting to me. And then the second data point that I found really interesting, I knew it intellectually, but to see it on paper was a little bit different, is that private schools are meeting the needs of kids for far less money than public schools. So public schools spend in Pennsylvania, we're around $22,000 per year per kid. And private schools, average tuition across the state is $12,000. And if you look at parochial schools, particularly the K-8 Catholic schools, it's more around $6,000. So they are doing a better job with less money. And that is just it's exciting for me to see. And that was really encouraging for me to see as well. So I like that.
Well, I mean, this is why there's so much pushback for programs like this, because when they're available, low-income people know how to find them and utilize them. And if low-income people start leaving public education, they got a problem because the books don't balance.
Right.
So
41% of Philly schools are low achieving. So in theory, if 41% of the school district just exited, now, obviously that wouldn't actually happen, but that's still a large number. They've lost 10% of their student population, I think, since COVID, the Philadelphia school district.
Since COVID, because they were going down every year.
Yeah.
Before COVID, it was 100. I think they had 115,000 students in the Philly school district, and then 80,000 in charter schools. That's just in charter schools. So when you add the private school kids on there, it's approaching a 50-50 split.
Yeah, and it is hard to know with the Philly school district data when you look at it, how they're breaking it out, because they kind of lump their alternative schools together along with their charter schools. So when I'm seeing on the list that there's 136 low achieving schools, I don't necessarily, it's not an apples to apples comparison when I go to the Philly website. I would have to literally go through everyone on the list to determine, is it an alternative school? Like, how many schools are we really talking about here? Because if you're counting charter schools, I don't think there's any charter schools that are on this list. So if you back those off, it's probably even closer to 50% of Philly schools that are low achieving.
I think that this is a good book to have if you're a parent, especially a parent of a young child. Before you start school, you should be reading about this. If you live in Philadelphia, you should read this book because it's going to give you information that you need to know in making some of the most important decisions you're ever going to make for your child, where they go to school. There was a guy, professor of labor economics at Drexel University, and he was really big on studying school performance and how that affected college and the workforce. And I asked him, where you go to school, did that reflect on how well you did in college? And he said it's the single most determining factor on how well you do in college, where you went to high school. Okay. And you can understand that because some high schools teach you a lot, have people who are ready to learn a lot, and it works. There are others where it's not that way. So this has been good. This is like I said, this is a lot of good information for parents. I got one more question for you here, and that is, how can parents learn more about getting EITC scholarships or OSTC scholarships for their children?
So the very first thing I would say is if your child's already at a private school, talk to your school, talk to the admissions or the financial aid office. They will be able to tell you if there's participating school and how to apply. If your child is not currently attending a private school, but you would like for them to do so, there are a couple websites for you. Listeners do not need to write this down. It will be in the summary description of the podcast. So you can just click on it. First of all, Children's Scholarship Fund of Philadelphia, they have a Find My School tool on their website. They service families living in Philadelphia County in grades K through 8. They can help you find a school and you can find out how to apply. If you're outside of Philadelphia or you're looking for a high school age child to find a school, I would direct you to K12scholarshipspa.com. That is a website that we designed to highlight the data from this report. There's a section for parents, directs you on some of these issues, how to find a list of schools, how to go about applying. And then lastly, if you go to scholarship.report.org, you'll be able to get a copy of this report and leaf through it for yourself. And then just one other thing that I would add, if you are in Philadelphia, it's really easy to go to their website and you can look up your child's school and you can see the test scores, the PSSA scores, or the Keystone State scores for your child's school. And we have learned through research that if children are not reading by third grade, the chances of them graduating from high school is far less. The chances of them going to college is far less. The chances of them being incarcerated is increased because of not being able to read. So if you go to your child's school and you see that their scores are really low for reading in particularly third grade, but I would say any reading score being low is a red flag in addition to math scores. So that is an indicator that you should seek an OSTC or EITC scholarship for your child at a private school.
Yeah, I think that parents today have a much larger responsibility for this. I don't think my mother had as hard a time determining what was a good school. And I think I had more options. This is in the 50s and 60s. Today, if you're in a poor neighborhood, it almost takes some luck or something like that to get you out of. So you have to know somebody. Sometimes kids who are very talented get noticed, but not all of them get noticed. And sometimes you just luck up on the right situation. But the idea of being in a low performing catchment area and having only that school as your option, that just seems like a prescription for disaster for kids.
And wealthy districts are not doing as well in the post-COVID era either. You look at their test scores, a district around here that in southeastern Pennsylvania, one of the highest or most expensive districts in the state. I think their reading scores are around 74% of kids are reading on grade level in third grade. And
that's not good.
That's not enough. Like if you just asked me, I would expect it to be like 90 something percent. No, like 3 out of 4, that's not enough. So even the options that used to be considered good options in our post-COVID world are no longer considered good options. They're not great options. They're okay, but.
Well, you know what always amazes me? In some of our highest performing school districts, you still have high numbers of people going to private school.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, okay. For sure.
And it's not anything, nobody says that they're abandoning the public school system. I've never heard that, right?
Right.
It's that they found a school that works really well for their child, okay? So if you've got money, you can do that, okay? But if you're poor, you're not supposed to think like that. Right.
Well, and I was having a conversation with someone recently talking about like private schools are expensive and, families can't afford that. Public schools are expensive because families have to buy a house in a certain neighborhood to get into a certain school. That's expensive. So we are kidding ourselves to say that like private school is, more expensive than public school. Public school is just as expensive.
Now, this is about holding on to the big pot of money. And it's, a lot of people want to blame teachers unions and they're in that fight. But it's everybody who benefits from that big pot of money. That's all the people who sell them things, all the people who benefit from having a centrally funded public school system. And that's what's killing the poor. So thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much for this wonderful report. I want to make sure everybody knows it's called Pennsylvania's Education Tax Credit Scholarship, How EITC Serves Children and Families in the Commonwealth.
Yep.
All right.
Thank
you,
Dave.
Read this book.
Thank you.
All right. Rachel, thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
And this is Dave Hardy. See you next time on the School Choice Report.